morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 13th day of March 2023. To introduce the panelists once again, Robert Mbui is the Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly, also the Member of Parliament for Kathiani constituency. Good morning. Morning, Sam. Jeffrey Wandeto is the Member of Parliament for Tetu constituency in Nyeri County. Good morning. Good morning, Sam, and happy to be back here. Great. And Jared Okello is the Member of Parliament for Nyando constituency, Kisumu County, sorry.
Yes, and good morning and good morning, Kenya. All
right. Nelson Koech is the Member of Parliament for Belgut in Kericho County and also the Chairperson of the Defense, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
It's good to see all of you here. And it's a special moment for us to reflect on what has been the 6 months of President William Ruto, but also just quickly to talk about what must happen now. One former President, Uhuru Kenyatta, cannot continue to be the party leader of the Jubilee Party starting today, bearing in mind that it's been 6 months since he retired. That's according to the retirement, the law on retirement benefits of a retired president that says that he cannot continue in active politics, but also cannot be in a position of leadership in a political party. And therefore, that's what it means. Now, Jubilee Party has to look for a new leader. And of course, they have had their share of squabbles between the leadership there, including a Secretary General versus an acting Secretary General, Kanini Kega versus Jeremiah Kioni, on what they've been doing. But now, on the papers this morning, on the front page of the Daily Nation, public servants set to lose packs is the story they're talking about. The Public Service Commission writes letter to protest move by the salaries body. The SRC reveals that among those targeted for review are retreat, sitting and non-practicing allowances, but acknowledges that its efforts to lower the wage bill have faced strong resistance. You look at how it has risen. The wage bill has risen from about 600 billion shillings in 2016. About 6 years later, in 2022, it was at 1 trillion shillings. That's what the SRC is hoping to cut by cutting down the allowances that they think may not be necessary. Norway, Ruto tells Raila on call to stop selection of electoral commissioners. This is the story about IEBC that we saw just a few moments ago. Residents in bandit areas given 24 hours to move out. It is also one of the main stories on the Standard. Kindiki, new threat to eliminate bandits. Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki yesterday issued a 24-hour ultimatum to residents to vacate suspected bandit hideouts. That is in the 6 counties. You'll see that on the Standard. Then still, on the Standard, Ruto, Raila trade words on calls for defiance and so much more that you find there. But now the story that I want us to focus on and also to use it to reflect on the 6 months of President William Ruto is the hot mess that is junior secondary. A visit to schools shows that lack of teachers, slow distribution of textbooks, additional levies burdening parents, and logistical nightmares as a result of the failed disbursement of capitation money, which is hurting learning in public schools. And of course, you're talking about 1.1 million learners who are in grade 6 who are to transition to grade 7. Last week, we heard that about 56,000 learners had not joined the junior secondary school level. Then 15,000 is the amount, the capitation that was to go to every learner across the country. Reports are that this money may not have reached the ground, and they are saying that no money has been released towards the printing and distribution of grade 7 textbooks. So it's such a challenge. And of course, the Deputy President was speaking about it last evening. But Honorable Koech, let me begin with you because you are the first to arrive. Even as the Deputy President was speaking about that this is a system that was rushed. There was an advisory from CS of Education then, Amina Mohammed, who was saying that we are not ready, we shouldn't have rolled out. But now here we are. And he's very confident that the working party, the presidential working party on education, is going to bring answers to most of these concerns. Yet it's 2 months, close to 2 months, because they reported on the 30th of January. What is it that we must do now to ensure that learners do not continue to waste their time in these junior secondary schools where they have deficiency of teachers, deficiency of materials, but also the learning facilities?
Thank you, Sam. Like you rightly said, what the Deputy President said yesterday, I hold strongly the same view that CBC was a rushed decision. It's a decision now that we cannot run away from. It's a decision that we must look at. However, I agree that the fact that it is the junior year 7, year 8, and year 9 are domiciled in primary. But then again, first of all, as a practicing member of parliament, there are huge, huge challenges, starting from teachers and books, like has been highlighted, and so many other changes that might need. There was serious need initially for a solid public participation from all the stakeholders, so that we have a structure that is not going to face the challenges that we are facing now. First of all, there are not enough teachers that are being posted to support the huge number of students who are here. Number two, there have been issues, and we've raised it even in Parliament. Honorable Mushomba introduced something to do with, had a very critical question on uniforms. So that you have all color uniform across all the junior secondary schools.
Right.
Number three, who was going to buy the uniforms? So it's becoming a bigger burden even to parents before they get to the secondary school, and amongst the other myriad of challenges. I think it will be important, Sam, at this point, to see what a government can do. I'm just reading in the paper that the minister was in the process of disbursing some money, but that is just healing. Putting a bandage on a big wound that is going to grow. My proposal, I'm not an authority in the education sector, but I can say that looking at it from a legislative perspective, it would be prudent at this point then to continue domiciling the year 7, 8, and 9 in primary school. And number two, reviewing the curricula, because and toning it down, it is high pitch. So that even the teachers who are teaching primary are able, because most of them are very comfortable with humanities, are still able to continue teaching this junior secondary school. And number three, we must then quickly provide a solution in terms of the shortage of teachers. The government, I'm aware, is shortly going to employ 30,000 teachers. That, I think, in the short term will be... what we have already, the ones that just did interviews the other day.
I think they've been reporting already.
They've been reporting, okay. That is a good number. I'm not sure, I was not aware that I've started reporting. That's a good number. So if we have that, then I think in the short term we will have fixed the problem. But it is more important going forward that we sit down again, review that curriculum, and see what can be done to the students. Otherwise, we are going to experience an extremely huge mess in our schools.
Jared, that might sound very drastic if he suggests that we tone down the curriculum or review it downwards. And if we're to do what he's saying, public participation, that may be another lengthy process. Are there quick wins? Because at the moment, there are learners that are in school, but they're not getting quality.
Well, thank you, Sam. I think the problem we have in this country, and probably an African problem, is aping the West. We have not registered any serious concerns around our 844 system. And we ask ourselves, why do we want to run away from it? There was a debate in Parliament not too long ago where one brought a motion to help delay, maybe by 1 year, the full implementation of JSS, or CBC as they call it. I think it didn't go through very well, or there was lack of adequate participation of the Ministry of Education on that front. But, it is true that this has experienced a lot of challenges. I remember when Ruto assumed office, he did set up a task force to help look at junior secondary school, but with an emphasis on looking at the general education structure within the Republic of Kenya. I had thought that one of the recommendations would be to delay the junior secondary school until such a time that we are ready to take off. But I think one of the issues they raised was to have it, proceed as it had been decided by the past regime. We have very serious lack of classrooms. The CBC, or junior secondary school curriculum, is so practical intensive. You look at what children are being asked on a daily basis to take to schools, and these things have to be bought, thereby exerting a lot of pressure on budgets of families. So with all these needs, there comes a very serious introspection the country needs to go through, whether this is the direction we would want to take. This is a completely different curriculum. And you may want to ask, do we have adequate number of teachers trained specifically for that curriculum? I know most of schools in my constituency, apart from the absolute lack of adequate number of classrooms to handle junior secondary school, we also have a huge shortage of teachers. In fact, some of my schools in Nyando, and I'm putting this tomorrow before Parliament in terms of a question, some schools have only three teachers out of 8 classrooms or even more. So these are 3 teachers on an already existing curriculum. Then you put more pressure by adding junior secondary school. So the pressure will be too much for everyone to bear. If the capitation funds would be channeled out in good time, then I think it will help head teachers specifically to help address some of these emerging challenges. But they're not getting that capitation.
Any explanation so far why this is not happening?
Well, the government representative is here, but that is part of a huge failure of this government that we have been treated to since Ruto imposed himself in the office.
You oversaw.
So if there will be that regular, and when Professor Magoha was in office, may his soul rest in peace, and part of the reasons why he may have died was to see how a child that he bravely bore in the name of junior secondary school and the entire education system going to the drains, courtesy of Ruto, he had no choice but to depart this world, and that is very absurd. So if this government would put its house in order, and we have heard, Treasury saying they do not have money. At the same time, we have heard their chair of Economic Council, David Ndii, a man that we respect very much, until lately when he's not really doing the right thing, said that they are borrowing 25 billion every Thursday. If this money will address issues of education, and forgetting about, these other largesse that they would want to propagate within the administration. Because if we do not handle the issues of our children, Sam, then we do not have a future. Let us invest very heavily on these children so that in future we have a country to rely on. Assuming we do not pay much attention, as they do now, on the education of these children, that means we are going to have a generational gap, either in terms of workforce, in terms of affluence, and in terms of elitism, because we also need elites within our communities. And therefore, this is something that we need as a country to really retrace our steps and look at in depth whether this is the direction we want to take or just abandon it for now and move back to the 844 system, which we had been accustomed to. Our budget, somewhat managed to bring it to light.
Okay. Here, Honorable Wandeto,
yes.
2 suggestions now. The Honorable Coach thinks that we should review it and sort of tone it down. One, Okello says that we should go back to 844 system. I'm just looking at the story on the Standard. On page 7, you see that at Nyamachaki Primary School in Nyeri, 198 students in junior secondary have been divided into 3 streams. So each stream is about 66. Of course, we know that the classes should be
45.
About 45 learners per class. Are you going to add another recommendation? Are you going to suggest real practical solutions that can be taken at such a time that all these challenges are being witnessed in these institutions?
Thank you, Sam. But before I answer your question, Sam, maybe we should not allow Jared to get away with 2 statements he has made. One, that President William Ruto imposed himself in office, which is not true. He was voted by 7 million Kenyans, validated by the Supreme Court. So I think we should not allow Jared to get away with that. The second one, I think he said is that Professor Makoha may have died because of the way the government handled CBC. Again, this is unfair to the family of the late Professor Makoha because everything shows, there was, it was open what may have caused his demise. But let me go to your question, Sam, which is whether I'm taking Nelson's or Jared's view on the whole issue of CBC. And I would say we are where we are. So the first thing is not very easy to put the reverse gear right now, as Jared would want us to do. We have been at this now this is the 9th year since CBC was mooted. Because remember, the learners who are now in grade 7 went to PP1, PP2, and they have done 6 years of primary school. So we are technically in the 9th year. I think what is sad is how 9 years later, we seem not to have gotten ourselves, a proper, solid plan of how we want to do this. And from where I sit, CBC is a good thing. From a theoretical point, from a conceptual point of view, I think CBC is the way to go. We've all been complaining in this country about rote learning, and we wanted our students to go through something that could prepare them in a much better way for the job market. And this is what CBC came to address. Obviously, there are certain things that we need to moderate and change. I'm sure you've all heard about the extreme cases of some of the things that students have been asked to do, and we have to just say, where is the world going and what skills we want our children to acquire, at what point should they acquire them, and then what is the right ways and methods and practical subjects of how they should be acquiring them. So from where I sit, CBC is something that we should pursue. I agree that we must review it. It has certain very, very serious deficiencies. We are all waiting with bated breath on the report of the committee that has been asked by the president to review this. Of course, the first recommendation that came from that committee is what has sort of like caused, the current rearrangement that we found ourselves in. Because I'll be honest, there was a little bit of investment that had gone into high schools to prepare them to receive the grade 7. But when out of public participation, the parents, and we were told it's about 80% of the people who were interviewed, said they would like their students to stay in junior secondary schools. Of course, that has put us a little bit now to refocus. Sorry?
You mean in primary schools? In
primary schools, sorry. Of course, that now has made us to refocus then our resources back to preparing our primary schools to be junior secondary schools. Now, this decision was made, if I remember, I don't know whether it was early January, when students were actually just after the exams came out. So it has been a difficult rearrangement to be able to do. I would say, like in my constituency, Teto, we have not even started preparing any school other than demarcating 2 classes and saying these will be the 2 junior secondary school classes. There is no infrastructural improvement that we have managed to start. Because even if you look at, even if we were to use the CDF funds, the funds have just come, a month or so ago. The first urgent order of business was bursaries for the high school students who are at home. So this is the time that now we are starting to put ourselves together with the ministry and see what we can be able to do. However, it is good to note that because of that change, we should expect some little bit of a difficult start. But the important thing is there is commitment both from the government, both from the parliamentarians to make sure that this thing works. The government has already, like Nelson rightly pointed out, deployed 30,000 teachers. We are told that is roughly about 1 teacher per school. There is some work going on to ensure that the teachers who exist in our primary schools, most of whom have diplomas, others even have degrees, can be able to start handling these junior secondary school students. But what I would urge the ministry to do is to move with a little bit of speed. I think currently we need to bring clarity much quicker, and whatever needs to be done needs to come on stream much quicker. If it's books, we cannot now be in month 2 and we are saying books some have received, some have not received. So we are where we are. Let us focus ahead. Let us fix as we fly.
Okay, fix and supply. For you, Honorable Boy, what is it that we must do? Because, yes, very good suggestions, some practical, some maybe not. But then again, the learner is losing. It's been 2 months, close to 2 months now.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Excuse me, Sam. And Sam, it's not 2 months. Like my colleague has just said, it's about 9 years. I think it's important that we set the record straight. That from the inception of this program, there was no proper planning. And some that are in government today were part of the problem when it started in 2015. Because remember in 2013, there was a proposal to give children laptops, which collapsed flat on its face. Soon after that, another scheme was hatched of coming up with a CBC program, and it was hyped in all media houses that Kenya is going to get, an internationally acclaimed education system. Now, years later, the first thing that this regime does is to decide that they are coming up with a commission of inquiry and to come up with a committee to advise them on what to do. But 2015, the president was a deputy president. Why can they start taking responsibility and tell us why didn't they plan for this thing on time? Some, even on the issue of teachers, let me tell you, the fact is that, I've just Googled and seen that our schools are about 32,000, our primary schools. Mm-hmm. And the teachers that are being deployed are only 30,000. That means every school will not get a teacher. That's already a problem. Secondly, you look at the curriculum, Sam, and you tell me which teacher will teach English, maths, Kiswahili, sciences. I think there is art, there is home science, there is, it's not possible. Mm-hmm. There is no teacher that is trained in that manner. So already there's a failure even on the part of teachers. So when they say they're deploying 30,000 teachers, it's a drop. It's actually not going to help us. There is no money deployed. The CS of education, and this has been one of the problems that I have faced as a legislator since I was elected in 2013. Mm-hmm. There's constantly this hype that education is free or the government is subsidizing education. Now, the minister did write a letter and indicated that no one should be asked to pay anything for junior secondary. Unfortunately, and then he says he's going to give capitation of 15,000 per child. So many months later, he hasn't given a cent. Now, you tell me, how are those children going to end up getting trained? Because they require input when they come to school. So already there is a problem, and I think it's important that the government comes out and says that they can afford this much, and let the parents maybe support in another way. Because every time you say it's free, parents should not chip in. You're cheating us because the teachers cannot look for money from their pockets to be able to run this system. So we already have a problem even of money. Mm-hmm. Now, on the matter of infrastructure, Sam, part of the curriculum envisages that they will be able to require laboratories to do subjects like home science. Mm-hmm. There's the regular sciences. I think there's a pre-technical, workshop required. There's also art and design that requires its own room, because all these are subjects that are not done in a regular classroom. Now, not a single school has even a single lab in this country for that infrastructure, and you require like an extra 4. Beyond the 2 classes or 1 class for grade 9, you require at least 4 labs. So I think the infrastructure, we are not ready. And the worst thing is that we tried to put up some classes in secondary schools and later on reverted and took the children back to primary. It doesn't make sense. The other problem that we are facing with CBC is that the children that were enjoying their school life in a school near their home have now been told that you cannot continue in junior secondary here in grade 7, you move to a school that is further away. So what is happening is that children who are taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get to school are taking half an hour, 1 hour. And that already has disenfranchised the children and their parents. And let me tell you, one of the schools that I represent, my best performing school in the last 2 KCPE exams, mm-hmm. was not allowed to have junior secondary because the number of students or pupils in that school was small. So what has happened is that these children are being told to go to another school, which is one of the worst performing schools in the constituency. I mean, the hue and cry out there is just too much. So I think what I would want to propose is that the government needs to start becoming responsive, because I think for me, one of the problems I have with this Kenya Kwanza administration is being responsiveness, taking responsibility, and ensuring that they can provide solutions to Kenyans. I think they need to start taking responsibility about education, about cost of living, about everything that they've set out to do.
You know, what is interesting is that each of you come from different political parties and also from different areas, but you have, should I say, complaints about the system. And I don't know how we're going to get solutions now, because, I mean, we just have to fix it.
Sam, you remember, before Ruto went to State House, he constantly said that he will scrap the junior secondary school of the CBC.
Okay, he never said that.
Oh, he did.
They did. They did in all their rallies.
No, he did. He did. He did. He said we will scrap it. We don't need it. But when he got into office, he did set up a task force now to relook into that thing in general, which to me was a good thing, because again, you are not going to employ executive fiat by scrapping something that people had invested in the last 9 years. But of course, I want to believe that there were very pertinent issues raised by that task force that need to be addressed. Just as my brother has said, this is an intensive kind of curriculum that needs very modern classrooms, not the usual classrooms that we know of. Then it pays a lot of attention and credence to creativity. So you need a creative center to have the CBC curriculum take shape. Then there's something called the smart boards, you know, things that you teach children how to draw and rub in those smart boards, which is also quite necessary for this thing to occur. And then again, the laboratories, and even most of our secondary schools now don't have laboratories, much less a need for a laboratory within a primary school to do CBC curriculum. So I think it is just a complete mess. And again, the latest technologies, and I'm glad that my brother Mbui has raised it, that this government talked about digital or digitization of our schools about 10 years ago. But up to now, we haven't seen what is digital about it. There are no laptops, there are no computers in these schools. Yet, when you talk about CBC, you need latest technologies. And you know, IT is an emerging and quite dynamic in nature. So we will just make do with a mess.
Let me just
but I am afraid for our children.
I need us to take a short break. What is it?
Just a quick one, so that we are clear about this. This is a mess of 4 years ago. In 2019, Uhuru Kenyatta released 8 billion for purchase, for construction of 8 billion for construction of 11,600 classrooms in 2019. What I should be asking Jared and Robert is, what were you doing at that time when you were in bed with the government that you did not interrogate that we had a problem today? They want us to fix a problem that we could not fix in 4 years, in 4 months. We have to be very realistic.
I'm sorry I was not the deputy president.
You were not, but I'm saying you are in bed.
I wish I was.
Thank you.
And you did not find appropriate to question
If I
them.
was, I would have done
But they want to question. Number two, in fact, Uhuru Kenyatta launched something, I don't know, he wanted to buy furniture from local distributors of furniture and Juakali artisans. And he spent a whooping 1.6 billion for the purchase of furniture. We should be asking, where is that furniture? All these questions lie within the misuse of public resources at that time.
But Sam,
The answer
No, Robert, you had your time. Can I just have 2 minutes of my time?
You've just finished your
No, I've not finished. So I am saying this is a huge problem that involves that all of us must come to the table and see how we can sort it out. This is not a mess that was created by this government. This was a mess that was created by the handshake brothers.
But some,
Sam, you know,
as we say,
if you allow me, if you allow me just 1 minute,
I don't want to allow you.
because it's important.
No, Bomboy, I don't want to allow you.
we'll come back to it then.
Because I'm just trying to check. I don't think the year was 2019. It was way after that. But anyway, let's take a short break. When we come back, we continue with the looking at Ruto's 6 months. There has been education. Clearly, there's a problem. Solutions not exactly coming from this panel, but we'll continue to talk about what's more we can find after the break.